And we're live, finally, with NABJ Digital and Poynter's Kenny Irby and Yahoo's Jelena Woehr. Tonight we're going to talk about how to spot fake images. In this age of user-generated content, I think it's more important than ever that journalists are armed with the tools to help them analyze photographs and other content that can ensure that we're putting out accurate information. So I'm first going to ask Jelena and Kenny to introduce themselves while I send out a link to the Google Hangout.
Jelena?
Hi, Sam. You want to start or should I start?
Go right ahead.
Okay. I'm Jelena Woehr. I work with Yahoo as Yahoo Contributor Network social media and community manager, but in my own time I am an active social native, so to speak. I use Tumblr, Facebook, all of the latest tools, and I've definitely noticed a growing problem where the kinds of people who are malicious and are willing to manipulate images to get their way actually have access to the tools and access to the skills. So identifying that and just generally fact-checking viral stories has become an interest of mine as a social media professional and as an activist. So I am here to chat because my blog happens to discover a faked image that had gone viral after someone maliciously photoshopped it. In my personal life, I'm an equestrian athlete. I have 2 horses and spend a lot of time at the barn. So there's your fun fact of the day. And I'm so excited to be here with Tracie and with Kenny. And Kenny's resume intimidates the hell out of me, and I don't know what to say in my little brief bio that's in any way as important. So welcome to a hangout with some amazing, important, influential people, and also with me. So, Kenny.
Okay. I'm Kenny Irby. Hi there. I'm Kenny Irby. I'm senior faculty member at the Poynter Institute, and there's no need to be intimidated by me or my resume. I'm the founder of Poynter's photojournalism program and have taught for 20 years with a history as a photojournalist and picture editor and consultant and educator now. I guess a personal fact that makes this group that's around me here today to be more comfortable on the panelists. I'm very much in touch with my feminine side because I was raised by my mom and 3 sisters, and for 29 years my wife and 3 daughters. So the very serious issue of the conversation tonight is about what I would consider, and I'm excited about having a conversation about the ethics that extend the picture editing and visual veracity issues so that users as well as practitioners will be able to detect and alert their viewers as appropriately needed to deception and erroneous images on the internet.
I guess you can be outnumbered or just choose to join in when you have that many women living with you, wife and 3 daughters. I'm
not complaining at all. Okay, so where do we go, Tracie?
Okay, thank you guys. I'm going to start off by asking, the first, I guess, most basic question: what is photo analysis? And why is it important for journalists to know about photo analysis?
Well, as I said in my introduction, I think photo analysis is to the beginner in the 21st century now really an extension of picture editing, or what I would refer to as visual verification. And so that's being able to analyze and authenticate the veracity of the image, the truthfulness of an image that has been shared in general media or traditional media or new media or just in social media.
Jelena, why don't you join in? Why do you think, do you agree with Kenny's definition about photo analysis?
Yeah, I would say photo analysis really It's becoming something that everyone needs to know about, not just people who are involved in journalism or in photography. We're all citizens of the social web, and we all have the same ethical responsibility to be good citizens on the social web that we do in our own communities. And if you saw somebody going door to door in your neighborhood and spreading a malicious lie about one of your neighbors, you would want to have the tools. You would want to know that you can call the Better Business Bureau, that you can call the Attorney General. You would want to know how to find out, you know, is this guy who's knocking on my door and offering to repair my roof for what seems like way too little money, is he a legitimate company or is he a scammer? And it's the same thing online. You want to have the tools and have the ability and have the awareness when you see something that just doesn't look right to then go to the photo analysis tools that are out there now are simple enough that you don't need a journalistic background. You don't need any particular unusual skill set to be able to do photo analysis. You just need to have a few bookmarks on your toolbar and be aware, have your eyes on, and be looking for things that just don't seem right.
Yeah, you know, I would agree that there are, you know, analysis tools that are part of the analytics in some cases, but I would back it up just to simple verification steps within an image. I mean, you look at the metadata. There's some easy, you know, clues in terms of detecting erroneous images and deception.
Talk a little bit more about looking at the metadata. I mean, take us through the initial steps, Kenny. Uh-oh. Kenny, you're back with us?
I don't know I don't know how much of that you got, but I was just alluding to the fact that there are. Sorry about that. I think we have to make press through our adversity and make it an opportunity as this technology fails us as we go through here. But I was just alluding to the fact that in traditional digital photography, isn't that an interesting concept? Or let's just talk about digital photography. In digital photography now, you can look at the metadata. There's some clear indicators that an image might be manipulated, and one is that when there is no metadata that is included that gives traditional caption information, who, what, when, where, that's a quick sign that this image may be deceptive in nature.
Okay, all right. Helena, I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about the image that you tracked down of the Trayvon Martin protester. Could you take us through the steps of, well, tell us a little bit about the photo first, and then take us through the steps of how you found the original.
So the photograph was beginning to become viral online. It was, I believe, edited and originally shared by a page called The Patriot Nation on Facebook. They deny it, but they watermarked it with their URL, so I would say it's fairly probable that they did the editing or someone involved with them did the editing, because I don't think somebody else would watermark their page's marketing on the image. And I began to see it being shared as, you know, look at this proof that people who are mad about the Trayvon verdict are just stupid. They had, I'm going to share my screen for a second here, and I will show you this image here. Can you see this image? Pardon the adult language here, I was angry. If you can see the image on the screen here, this version on the right is the version that was beginning to be shared around on Facebook, and as you can see, they've changed it so that she has 13 sons instead of 3, and they've added 2 misspellings to her protest sign. So on the left here, the original that I was able to find, you can see that this woman has a very reasonable and moving protest sign about her 3 sons, and she's spelled everything correctly. So I can come back to our...
We actually can't see that on the screen. Well, I can't see it on the screen.
I just did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Yep.
You saw it, Kenny?
Yep, I did.
Okay. Well, that's an important thing. I can't see it, but that's okay.
Okay, Bridget says she saw it too, so I guess it came through for everybody who was otherwise not. I guess it's just you because you're the moderator, Tracie. I guess you're just the unlucky one who doesn't see it.
That's okay. I've seen it.
You've seen it, and you don't need to see that again. That's not a
No,
good image. But
no, I
I
don't.
saw that beginning to go viral around Facebook, and there's some clues in there which I can speak to a little bit that that is not an authentic image. For instance, the resolution is so low that it's clear that, you know, even an iPhone today takes a higher resolution image than that. That looks like JPEG artifacting from being saved over and over again, possibly intentionally to artifact the image heavily to make it look like it hasn't been edited by blurring it to hide the telltale signs of the editing. Then when you look at the sign, there's a little bit of a distortion around the letters that have been changed. You can see the human eye is an incredibly powerful computer, and you can see around the S in the sign and the U, there's almost a blocky sort of blur. It's very hard to get the exact texture of something that has texture right when you're photoshopping an image. So I put that into a tool called photo forensics. And then I also ran it through 2 different reverse image searches, TinEye and Google Image Search. And photo forensics did indicate a high likelihood that the image had been edited. There's another tool also which I can show. Let me do another screen share here real quick and show you this other tool. This is called 4 and 6 4Match. Now, 4Match is even more reliable than, this is the free one, Photo Forensics here. 4Match is even more reliable. It's a professional tool, so it's super expensive, but if you just want to check one image, you can just buy a demo license through the try page, and then that way you can basically access a professional tool for one image very inexpensively. So these tools, they look at the error rate per pixel on the image, and if a pixel is near its maximum error rate, that likely means that it's been edited. If it's at a baseline, that likely means it's original or close to original. There's another little tool that this one, let me share this one as well. This one is actually deactivated, but this is a great example. You can see as I mouse over this photograph of the young woman, the parts that glow, those are the pixels that when this old tool, error level analysis, which is the same thing photo forensics is, I just used this one for the example. When you see the error rate on her lips, they're glowing, on her fingertips, they're glowing. The glowing is a higher error rate in the pixels, and that indicates that there's a high level of post-processing. So I put it through several of those tools, and fortunately I finally found the original image, which was actually on a German news website. I guess they thought that they were going to be clever by pulling an image that hadn't been in the US news so that people wouldn't have seen it and recognized it and realized it was edited. And I put together this little graphic and put it on Tumblr, and it went viral. And then the really wonderful thing, the best thing, you know, it's great that a lot of people found out that that wasn't real and realized that malicious photo manipulation was happening in their social networks. But the best part really was that after a few weeks, the woman who was pictured contacted me, and I got to learn a little bit about her 3 sons. And, you know, her eldest son, who was with her at the protest, is an honor student and a great big brother to his 2 sons. And she had no idea that her name was being smeared that way online by this malicious group of people. But she and her family are doing well, and I'm very happy to know that she's bringing up her sons to be activists and to speak for human rights. So that's my story.
I think that's really cool how it actually led to interacting with probably a member of the community that maybe would not have come across your blog or your content otherwise. So you were engaging the community in that way, and it also could have led to another story.
Yeah, you know, that was the one thing. When I put that post up, I didn't really expect it. I knew it would go a little viral, but I didn't expect it to be to the degree that it did. But once it did, it was just like, the one thing I want to come out of this is that she finds out about this, and she knows that as bad as these people are who are just making fun of her and making her look uneducated and saying these malicious things about her, there's just as many people who have her back. And that was the one thing I wanted out of it. And that finally did happen. And I'll show the last thing I'm going to share here. I've got up, she doesn't typically use Tumblr, but she made a Tumblr profile just to contact me. And it's a small image, so I have to increase it here so you can see it at all. But this is her beautiful family and her 3 sons in this picture. And it's just so wonderful to know that she's okay and she knows that people have her back.
Cool. Denise is on the line now. So whenever Denise, you jump in whenever you get ready to. But I wanted to talk to Kenny a little bit about what he thinks about what Helena just did, and talk a little bit about the ethics surrounding all of that.
Well, I think that's a fantastic case study on multiple levels. At the end of the day, one, truth telling was revealed. We were able to debunk the deception and the lie that was out there by the perpetrator. And I really love the fact that in the 21st century, Helena was able to bring in and engage a member of the community in the social space. And so this idea of expanding community and using the community not only to validate and authenticate truth-telling, but to also, give voice to the voiceless, in an authentic way. And so that's the new level of engagement. Now, this case does give you some sense of the complexity here and the nature of the challenge, or what I like to call the depth of the challenge, because this is not just something that's going on in the United States or in Florida, for my instance, or Elena in Colorado, but what's going on, globally. These kinds of things are happening with all kinds of stories, and not to minimize, the nature of the Trayvon, Martin case in the United States, but this same approach and strategy is happening on a global scale in stories that involve not only an individual but hundreds and thousands of individuals. So I mean, it is an important issue for NABJ tonight to be taking the lead in this conversation. I've had 2 or 3 other conversations, actually one today with a reporter from Nova Scotia about Instagram and deceptive practices because of the filters. But you don't have to have any kind of real sophistication now. Photoshop's been out for more than 25 years. And so it's a fairly common image manipulation tool. And there are others that people can manipulate pixels and alter the reality of an image that they're presenting.
I think it's coming out more in the forefront now because of what we mentioned earlier about user-generated content, and that's why, because once upon a time we didn't take a lot of content from people outside our newsrooms, so we weren't confronted with this issue as much as we are now. But I want to go back to some of the tools we talked about. Kenny talked about checking out the metadata. He also talked about distortions around lettering, but Helena talked about photo forensics and format, and I want to find out a little bit more about what is photo forensics and how exactly does it work.
So let me show this again. I'll pull it up. So photo forensics it's a very, very basic tool. It's not perfect. There's some tutorials that you should definitely go through before you can see them over here, error level analysis tutorial. So basically, the most simple way to describe it is when you edit an image, whatever your purpose is, even if you're just cleaning it up, you're a professional photographer, that increases the error rate in the pixels in that area. So what this does is you can upload a file, and I'll just upload a random picture of my horse here to show you how it works. You upload a file, and it creates basically a heat map of the error level of the pixels in this file. So you see the original here, then you see this heat map here. So this is all fairly consistent. You can see that it's sort of a negative of the image in a way. You can see the outline of the horse, but it's all really fairly a consistent texture to the image. And the couple of places that it does show, and you can roll over it on the top version. The couple of places that it does show a little bit of a glow, this is a professional photograph, and my photographer actually had brightened the color here on the purple. So where the stronger glow is, it's more likely to have been edited, and that color has been brightened. Her white marking on her forehead had been brightened. So you can see there that it creates basically not proof that something's edited, but a heat map that shows where it's likely to have been edited. This is another one here, mousing over this again. So that's how photo forensics works. It's not something that I would recommend using by itself to say this is proof that an image is edited, but it is definitely something to have in your toolbox. And then if you go over to a reverse image search like TinEye, which basically searches for an image by image, it searches for other copies of the same image online. Google Image Search has a version of reverse image search too that you can do. Just go to Google Image Search and click the camera button in the search bar instead of entering a term. And if you find other different versions of the same image online, and also your photo forensics heat map shows a high error level in the areas that are different, then that's pretty good evidence that someone changed the photo.
Yeah, it's really interesting that this is CSI kind of investigation that that now any user, any participant, any citizen anywhere can engage. And historically, Tracie, as you were alluding to, this had been something that the major media companies would do. The software used to be extremely expensive, and only the wire services, and actually MIT and Princeton were the only two universities that were had their as research centers that were exploring this, because it was such a small boutique market. Only the the Associated Press and the wire services were the only early clients for something like this. But now, as you alluded to, the pervasiveness nature of photography, everybody's a practitioner, and now in the internet space there's so much information. For a variety of reasons, citizens are interested in validating the authenticity of images.
Now that's an interesting point. I had not thought about citizens verifying and validating, but I do remember there was a case recently, I think it may have been in Syria, or it may have been in Egypt, where there were just hundreds of photos coming in to news organizations. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Kenny, or either one of you, about how news organizations are now getting inundated by photos. And I think the example I just recalled, it was there were folks on Twitter who called it to the news organization's attention that the photo had been manipulated. Are either of you familiar with that?
Well, I think yes, we have to be careful about manipulations, because manipulations have happened way before Photoshop. So this is not a new reality that we're dealing with. Airbrushing, and which was very commonplace in the early days, going back to the Soviet Union government, when people were mysteriously would be missing from photographs, and the Lenin and the Stalin era. So this is new, and what this is not a new issue, but what's new is the speed and the execution of which that now happens in the internet, and which is for the most part, as we heard earlier on, is very low resolution, and so when you see those images on a computer screen, they often look more vibrant, more authentic than they actually are. And so now what's happening is the awareness and sensitivity of practitioners that this deception is far more pervasive than any of us would like to think.
Denise, I've asked my questions. Like I said, do you have any that you want to jump in with?
I'm on the road. As I said, I'm on the road. I don't have a lot of stuff on my laptop here, to show. These are situations when you go back to Arab Spring. There were many images that came out of the Arab Spring that were fabricated, and even before that, there were instances where images were found to be deceptive and malicious, that have been, primarily propaganda that people have put in the images. You see it all the time. I actually have a hard drive with a couple hundred images of the killer shark in the San Francisco Bay. All these kinds of images that are legends that have gone around the internet. I mean, there were images in the 9/11 bombing of the guy who was supposedly on the tower on the roof, and all of those images were fabricated. And for a period, they were believable enough for some individuals who either were not sophisticated enough in their understanding of photography, or vulnerable enough to believe that such fabrications were authentic.
The recent example comes to mind of the photos of sharks in Hurricane Sandy and the floodwaters in New Jersey, which, you know, it turned out a couple of those were actually real, but the really dramatic ones turned out to be image manipulation. So it's like every time there's a headline story in the news at this point, people who are using the social web to access photos of this event have to expect that some of them are going to be pranks. You have to just know that, you know, maybe 10% of what you see is going to be fake.
Denise, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I was just wondering from Kenny, what's going on these days? What are some of the tools that photo editors are incorporating in their vetting process when you're looking at, if you ever get an opening to hire a photographer, when you're looking at their take, at their I just don't know if photo editors are using photo forensics, looking at people's.
I think quite the contrary. I mean, there are a number. I know the Associated Press have a proprietary software that's, you know, like as I alluded to earlier, that's very expensive. I do know a number of photo editors that use photo forensics. You know, but these are not tools that people use on an everyday basis. Again, right. I think the two early on pretty much bulletproof alternatives are, as Elena alluded to, is first of all resolution. You can, if there's an image 72 DPI, if it wasn't documented 10 years ago in early digital, it's going to have a much larger image resolution and fidelity quality that needs to be taken under consideration. And any images that come in that small have been reduced in their resolution, which is an indicator of potential manipulation. And then the metadata, you know, actually for a very large segment of the society, there's metadata from the camera that's automatically generated. And then any professional photographer or photographer who has moved beyond the image enthusiast level, you know, they want to put their own copyright or watermark in the image, and so that helps you authenticate the image. So if an image doesn't have a date, if it doesn't have an author, which generally refers to the photographer who documented, who is claiming copyright, those are clear indicators that you might want to use one of these photo forensic software to try to analyze the image. And then, I mean, you can look for other issues, and we haven't talked about that, and it's very worthwhile. I mean, there's some basic issues for a sophisticated eye to look at shadows and lighting, and then pixelation. Those are the, you know, the 4 steps, or the 5 steps would be file size immediately, metadata second, and then variances in the image composition. And then, if it looks too good to be true, almost always it is.
Over in the chat here, Mike Green had a question for you, I think, Kenny, or possibly for both of us. He wants to know, how prevalent is severe photo manipulation in media?
It is extremely prevalent now. You know, I have all kinds of folks who send me emails, not just the Poynter on Call calls from, you know, 9 times out of 10 are professionals or students who are writing about journalistic issues. Because of the pervasiveness of mixed media, you have legitimate mainstream media organizations, you have ethnic media and alternative media publications, because you have bloggers, you have Facebook, where people can post anything. Anywhere people can post images now, there is, a 10 to 15%, variance of erroneous information there. And also because we live in such a politicized society, as the case that Lena was alluding to and had taken us through, you have, racist motive and intolerance that's stimulating a lot of the deception. So it is much more pervasive than any of us, I think, want to admit.
There's a researcher, Hanny Farid, who has done years and years of research on photo manipulation and image analysis, and has been advocating actually since 2011 for photographs, at least in advertising and in these shiny glossy magazines, to basically have a Photoshop nutrition facts box on them where there's a 1 through 5 rating on how photoshopped the image is right next to it, where you basically accept that, images are going to be post-processed to some extent where they're published, but have the news organization proactively go out there and say, okay, this is only a 1, it's only a little manipulated, or, you've got Taylor Swift in an advertisement, okay, this is a 5, she's really manipulated. So it's really, Hani Farid is a great person to look up if you're interested in this in media.
Absolutely. There's a lead story in the Huffington Post today, if you go there, about, I think it's the 9 most unnecessarily photoshoppings. And that goes back to Mike's question. Image manipulation is largely a part of the diaspora of photojournalism today. Every cover that you see of an actor or an entertainer has, some level of digital cosmetic surgery. Whether that's hair color or eye color that's been changed as a manipulation. There's a huge sad history of manipulation in advertising and marketing imagery, and that's all a part of the the diaspora of media now.
I have a question about journalists who are graduating from college, photojournalists who are graduating. Are they coming out of college understanding this this issue, and are they trained on how to use these tools to spot photo manipulation, or are editors having to train them once they once they're hired?
Well, I've been on 3 college campuses in the last 2 weeks. I was just on Monday in University of Florida, and last week I was in Arizona at Arizona State as an editor in residence there. And young people, this is very much a part of their everyday life. They are aware, and so the young journalists are aware of the tools and the sophistication and the ease. And remember, they've been doing Photoshop all their lives almost. So everything that they do, this is second nature in terms of enhancing the image. And the kind of aesthetic of being perfect or near perfect. And so in newsrooms, I think what's really important is to be able to distinguish for those young journalists who are working across media and platforms where they're doing an internship. And I had a student share with me, yeah, well, I was in the marketing division at ESPN where we were told to manipulate images, and then I went into another internship in a newsroom where I was told that I would be fired if I manipulated images. And so, how do you deal with that that kind of duplicity that students are being engaged in, because the ethics are not global or universal to any extent.
Did you want to, that seems like a good segue into this document that you have here, Kenny, about ethics in photojournalism. Do you want me to broadcast that so you can talk through your document?
That would be very helpful. So one of the things that Poynter has done throughout its entire 38-year history is espouse a gold standard and encourage journalists to be thoughtful about the value of ethical decision-making and truth-telling in terms of the integrity and the relationship with its audience. And so we've known the SPJ guidelines, and there's a new book on the 21st century ethics. I wrote a chapter on is seeing no longer believing. And so we give some 21st century guidelines that where truth-telling is still at the top of the ladder of abstraction, that you know, we still need to seek to report the fullest truth possible. But we also need to be able to be transparent in those instances, because news organizations, credible news organizations, have reasons when you might use the technology, Photoshop, or any image enhancement software for an effect in a feature section, in a fashion section. And so being transparent with your audience about how you use those tools is really important. And then the sense of community. How do you engage the community, and how do you define a broader community ethic of diversity is equally important. So we give some new guiding principles, if you will, for the 21st century to think about how independence used to be a very strong principle, and minimizing harm. So minimizing harm basically now evolves into an idea of community, and being aware of that community and engaged in that community, and independence now grows into the new idea of transparency. Because what we found in the case studies that we have documented is that when an audience is aware of what the manipulation and the justification of the manipulation might be, they're far more accepting of the media company or the individuals that have executed that manipulation. So, you know, we see some examples of when you pixelate the face of a minor, you know, for the just and legitimate reason of protecting the identity. Those kinds of things people are accepted, but you know, are comfortable with and willing to accept when they understand what has been done and not feel like they've been duped. So I encourage our audience to consider that.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. I'm not sure if Denise does, but does anyone else have any questions before we wrap it up? Mike, you do? Oh. Okay, well, I want to thank...
Okay, I see Mike's question. It's over in the chat. He's wondering about how CNN's iReport is vulnerable to broadcasting potentially manipulated images, manipulated news. And I'll speak to that for a moment. I've spent kind of my whole career in the user-generated content space, bringing quality user-generated content into premier media spaces. And I think there's an argument for both an expert human level of moderation, where people who really do have an extensive journalism background are deciding what an organization throws its weight behind, and also for that crowd element. You know, Kenny touched on a case where people on Twitter actually told media organizations that they were broadcasting potentially falsified images from the Syrian uprising, from the Arab Spring. And there's that truth of crowd wisdom, where if you show a photo to 100 people and there's something wrong with it, 10 or 20 of them are probably going to smell a rat, and 1 or 2 of them are going to have the tools to prove that there's a rat. So I think one of the biggest questions that the user-generated content community is going to be dealing with as we integrate with media further, as we have companies like Huffington Post, like Yahoo, like CNN, making user-generated content a source of the story, not just a source for the story, that then a professional journalist goes and does the story, but now it's becoming the story. One of the problems that we're going to have to solve and address is building really effective tools to identify automatically content that's potentially problematic. You know, one possibility would be to build a tool that does that error rate analysis on an image when it's submitted by a user, and then if it identifies something that has an uneven error rate throughout the image, to drop that right into a queue for where an expert human then reviews it. So the automated tool reviews it, flags it as suspicious, and then before it's actually shown to an audience, maybe a human who has training from someplace like the Poynter Institute, somebody who's who's been taught by professors like Kenny to spot this stuff then uses professional level tools and either authenticates it and then that goes back and trains the automated tool, no, okay, no tool, this was okay, don't send me stuff like this. Or if you validate that it is faked, then that trains the tool, yes, flag things like this more often. So a combination of really smart automation and machine learning and expert human influence, I think, is the answer here.
I'd agree 100%. You know, I think we're at a place now where, let's face this, folks, images are incredibly important. It's a multi-million-dollar industry on the internet, in media organizations, wire services, publications, television. Still photography is still huge. It's a compelling way to tell stories. And so we're going to have a blend of automation and human detection. You know, every image, and very similar to a spell check, or just like now you go from spell checking to plagiarism checking, filters that will, you know, every image in a database will go through, and as she alluded to, they'll be queried, and then questionable images based on the pixel rate and the error rates that may come in the algorithm will be set aside, and then somebody would have to go and authenticate that image, or at least check it at another level of critique. And it's unfortunate, but we live in a society where people lie a lot for a variety of reasons, and images are no different there, because images are powerful and draw tremendous attention for journalistic reasons and just for aesthetic interest reasons.
I think there's something of a generational shift happening here too. You know, you look at people who are teens, 20-somethings, preteens today, and they've grown up with Instagram as their photo sharing app, and Instagram is all about manipulating an image. I mean, that's the whole concept of the app, is you make yourself look better or look like you're in the 1930s with these filters. So I think we're kind of, the people who are in high school and middle school and maybe even the freshman class in college have grown up with so much filtration on images that they can spot it in a minute. They know when the colors aren't right. They know when shadows aren't right. So I think as that generation who's really just has an eye for it becomes the primary consumers of photographic media, you know, you'll see even on Reddit, on subreddits that are photocentric, if something is posted that is filtered, it's called out immediately. It's the first or second comment, and it's heavily downvoted. You know, when I'm going to out myself as with this totally embarrassing thing here, but one of the subreddits that I subscribe to has a lot of makeup tutorials, and I'm terrible at being a girl. I'm a complete tomboy, so I look at all these makeup tutorials, and if somebody posts a picture where it's been filtered to intensify the colors or make them look better, so it's not actually their skill, it's their Photoshop skill that's showing, a 12 or 13-year-old girl will call them out at this point, you know. So it's getting to the point where it's really going to be the media outlets will know that there's no excuse not to be checking and validating and being really sure about anything that they're making a story, because their audience will catch them like that.
That's an excellent point. It is absolutely an excellent point. And like I said, I had that very much validated in Arizona at Arizona State 2 weeks ago, where you know, students were saying, yeah, you know, we know it. Why does it take the newspaper or the TV station so long to figure it out? And I think that's the generational reality that you just gave us wonderful context and reasoning for. And the other piece, the other thing that I will add, because I know you wanna probably bring this to an end, Tracie, because it's been over. We've done our hour. But this will do. This genie is out of the box. So there's no going back to the days when, you know, you could see an image and you could trust it and believe it, and that creates a lot of consternation for professional photojournalists and media organizations who historically, you know, haven't had to deal with a volume now of the kind of images that are out there for deceptive purposes. And as soon as an election season comes up again, anywhere in the viewing and listening audience here, that's when you need to put your detection back in gear, because the political images are almost always pretty deceptive and elusive in these kind of areas.
Definitely, and let's take this last question here I'm seeing over on the sidebar from Mike, and then we'll let Tracie wrap up. And I know you're traveling and you're probably ready to get some sleep in there, Kenny. He's wondering, are there any tech startups working on a product for instant vetting of photos? I don't know of any right now, Mike, but I'm sure there is something in one of the startup accelerators. If you look at Y Combinator, 500 startups, if you look at one of the Techstars chapters, but really I think where that's going to come from is the massive media organizations that are so vulnerable to this. They're going to have to invest there. They're going to have to invest, because otherwise they're going to end up, I think it's probably only a matter of time before some of the major media organizations start dealing with real liability if they accidentally put out something that has a manipulated image in it that somehow harms somebody's reputation or invades their privacy on false information. So I think really the organizations like CNN, the Associated Press, Reuters, Getty Images, those are the ones that are going to end up investing in developing that tool. And his other question here is, when media are duped by an image, how do they respond to correct the problem? So Kenny, do you want to take that one and then we'll wrap up?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. But let me back up to your excellent point there, Elena. Here's one of the big challenges. In the grand scheme of media, authentic mainstream media, one of the biggest casualties, or two of the biggest casualties, if you will, of the recent downsizing in newsrooms have been copy editors and picture editors. So the expertise in media companies is very much an Achilles' heels to being able to maintain the integrity and the truth-telling that have really distinguished mainstream media companies from the masses. And then moving forward, I think the challenge is that I'm not convinced that mainstream media organizations have the wherewithal or the conviction to be the leaders in this kind of technology. Truth be told, the government and the military have invested more money into these kinds of resources than the industry that we represent as an organization.
That is terribly interesting. It's unfortunate too. Because, yeah, it's scary.
Well, you asked for the truth, that. You can't handle the truth. That's what people out there need to know. You can't.
You probably have noticed that Facebook now automatically suggests not only tag your friends, but which friend to tag. And that's gotta be. You're kidding me if there's not a national security use for that exact. I mean, there's gotta be.
Yeah.
Well, I want to wrap things up. I want to say thank you to both Helena and Kenny for joining us tonight. This has been a fantastic Google Hangout. I can't wait to post the video so other people can see it. I want to make sure that everybody knows that we have a NABJ digital YouTube channel, so that if you want to come back to this video and refresh your memory or refer back to it, just go to NABJ Digital on YouTube or come to our Facebook page, and we'll post it there as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank
you guys so much for having me. It's been great meeting you, Kenny. And Mike, I know you were anxious to have the resources from this session be posted online with it, so I'll make sure that Tracie gets all of that to post with the video description, so then you can visit and check out these tools and stories for yourself. And Tracie, it's been an honor to be a part of the NABJ's Google Hangout on this topic. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. Good night, everybody.
Good night.